Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn how to heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is Mike Dilke. Mike Dilke is the owner of relaxbackuk.com and also a fellow radio show host here on the fantastic UK Health Radio. Mike Dilke is the host of the Relax Back UK show. And you can find out more about Mike Dilke and his wonderful work at his website, relaxbackuk.com. Welcome, Mike Dilke.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invite. It's lovely to be here.
Now, Mike Dilke, we're both on this fabulous UK Health Radio, which I believe now has, as of this recording, has 1.2 million listeners all over the world. So we have the great privilege of sharing wonderful practical information with people all over the world about how to be healthier. What do you do when you're not podcasting?
Right. So when I'm not podcast, well, I do lots of things like anyone else. I spend a lot of time running after children, running after my wife, just trying to keep everyone happy. But by way of a job, which is kind of probably what people might be more interested in, or maybe not, I don't know. I can tell them about my daughter's ballet lessons and stuff like that, but that's probably less of an issue. The Relax Back UK company, what I do is I import ergonomic furniture from Sweden into the UK. So by ergonomic furniture, I mean things like chairs that are good for your posture, desks that go up and down. So, these kind of things, you can press a button and the whole lot goes up or down, whatever. So you can sit at any height, or you can stand and do your work. And there's a couple of other items as well. I've got some very nice things that I import that you can stand on when you're at your desk. And, so that's essentially, I import ergonomic type stuff to help people in their offices. That's the business.
What you're doing in your work is incredibly important. Yesterday, I was working one-on-one, Mike Dilke, with a lady who had come to me because she'd come to my yoga class. And then she called me 2 days later. She's like, Catherine, I can't believe it. I'm completely pain-free. She said, I don't know what you did, but I'm completely out of pain. She said, usually when she takes yoga, she actually doesn't feel better, but she wanted more help. And the first thing that I talked to her about is how she sits, because I told her and I explained to her, if you sit with retroversion of the pelvis, which is basically where your lumbar spine rolls back and your lower lumbar disc compress. I said, if you sit with retroversion of the pelvis, you're going to have tremendous pain, no matter how much massage you get, how much acupuncture you get, how many times you go to yoga class, or how much physical therapy you get. So it's really critically important that we sit properly, and to have these chairs and desks that help us to do that is really important. So, let's talk about these chairs, for example. Why do you think it's so important that people sit at a good chair when they're doing their work?
Okay, so actually, first off, I have to mention that I am not a medical person. Okay, I'm not a physiotherapist or an osteopath. Actually, I'm a civil engineer. I qualified as a civil engineer, and then I spent a long time building roads and designing bridges, all this kind of thing. So the answer I give you is not going to be from your point of view as a yoga teacher or a therapist, but I have done yoga. Actually, I'm not a great yogi or yoga teacher. However, I am kind of a bit more flexible than most paunchy middle-aged men, I would say. So I do have a feeling, an idea of what good posture and how to get it is. And it's just a few very simple things that I tend to say. So when you're sitting, make sure that you're in a comfortable position, obviously, but don't cram yourself into a silly little area, funny little desk. Something that always amazes me is that on the first day in a new job, you're shown to your desk, and that desk is 72 centimeters high, whether you are 6'6" or 5'1". Welcome to your new job. There's your desk. Deal with it. And it's just bonkers, isn't it? I don't know why do bosses do that to their staff? So the first thing is make sure you don't crush yourself in. Sit comfortably. Now that can mean lots of different things to lots of different people, but what I tend to say is try and have your knees below your hips, and keep moving. So those two very simple things. So that's not always so easy to do. It might mean slightly sitting on the edge of your seat and trying to have your knees below your hips. Certainly there are some diagrams that are on social media, or if you start Googling what's a good sitting posture, and everything is at 90 degrees. Have you seen these diagrams? So I'm not really sure where that came from, but I just don't think that's a good, terribly natural sitting posture. So I tend to say knees below your hips, and I'm kind of hoping you might agree with some of the things I'm saying, and keep moving. Don't be static. Don't sit there. And this is a bonkers thing to say, because essentially my business is selling chairs. So, but I often say to people, don't sit down. Stop sitting down for all that time, which is an odd thing to say for someone that sells chairs. But just don't sit at your desk for 8 hours non-stop. Just don't do that to yourself. Now, I've ranted on a little bit there, but it's something that I kind of feel quite strongly about.
Well, one of the things that we know from scientific research is that sitting is the new smoking. And the more hours you spend every day sitting stationary at a desk, the more likely you are to have all kinds of illnesses and even to die early. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And for our audience, I actually produced a free handout on one of my websites on posture. And it explains with photographs and directions how to stand without pain and how to sit without pain. So if you go to unlimitedenergynow.com and you scroll across the top to the far right, there'll be a little button that says free downloads. Go down there, and the very last free download is posture exercises, and it's a free handout. And it was actually produced for me by one of my clients. And I have photographs of him, and it looks like he's lost 30 pounds from the photographs. And it's just him, minutes apart. One is him standing improperly and sitting improperly, and then standing correctly and sitting correctly. So I agree with you that your hips need to be higher than your knees. And so I'm going to just describe for our audience how I would explain how to sit properly. And as I'm doing this, I'm thinking about it myself.
I'm going to do it. You say it, I'll do it.
Okay. So the first thing is you want to find your sit bones. So defluff the pillows, pull the flesh out from underneath your buttocks, and sit on your sit bones. Now find your hip bones. So if you bring your hands in front of your body, and you're going to find some bones, some hip bones, and just for fun, roll back. That's retroversion in the pelvis. Retro, of course, means back, or backwards, and then anteversion of the pelvis, which means forward. Now, when your hip bones roll back, your lumbar spine compresses, and the 5 vertebrae in your lower back support 2/3 of your body weight. So let's just say, for the ease of math, that you weigh 150 pounds. Well, 100 pounds of pressure is being placed on L5, your 5th lumbar vertebrae, and S1. So that lower back supports 2/3 of your body weight. So if you sit with your pelvis rolled back, the discs are going to compress. And if you sit with anteversion of the pelvis,
yeah, I'm doing it now. I can, you know, if you do it, you can feel it, can't you?
Yeah. So sit. Yeah. So you want to find. So step 1, find your sit bones. Sit on your sit bones. Step 2 is anteversion of the pelvis. So roll those hip bones forward, and then elongate the spine. And I agree with Mike that it's better if your hips are higher than your knees. And when your hips are higher than your knees, it's easier to have this anteversion of the pelvis. But if you go to unlimitedenergynow.com and go to free downloads, and then go down to the very last one, the posture exercises, you can see photographs. And then if you were looking at the side, from the side, you want the middle of your ear to line up with the middle of your shoulder to line up with the middle of the hip. Okay. And then you lift and spread your chest and reach tall through the crown of the head. And then if you notice just doing that, it's easier to breathe. Most people, when they sit, if you look at them from the side, they look like a turtle. So they're all just rounded forward. Their chest collapses, and it actually restricts your ability to breathe. And when you round like a turtle, your upper back goes into what's called kyphosis, aka slumping. And I always joke on my mission is to stamp out slumping in my lifetime. Of course, I'm joking. That'll never happen. But
I've got a question that I'm really intrigued to ask you. Yeah. And obviously, there's an interviewer's rule of never ask a question unless you kind of know what the answer is. Well, I don't know what the answer that you're going to give me is, so this is a bit of a gamble. But you know those kind of chairs that support everything, absolutely every bit. Like there's a thing sticking in the bottom of your back, so you know, to support your lumbar, and then you've got something, a headrest, and then armrest. So every single bit of your body is supported. And I see those, and I think, you know, our body is designed to support itself. You know, we might as well be in bed. I'm not so sure that's such a great way forward. What do you think?
Yeah, well, you know, I think that's a great question. Mike Dilke, the owner of Relax Back UK, and I would refer to it like a tool. So, for example, if you've been in a car wreck and you've broken your back and broken your neck,
yeah, sure,
then something like that could maybe the only way you can actually sit in a chair. But when you sit totally supported, you don't get to use your core muscles, right? And, you know, with muscles, you either use it or lose it, right? So it's very important. Yeah. I agree with you to move. Now, I'm hyperactive, so you don't need to tell me to move. and of course, they've done.
We're both sitting here bouncing around in our chairs, aren't we?
Yeah. So, you know, and there's lots of studies that show that people who are hyperactive burn more calories. So, you know, there's a lot of benefits. But in addition to your, you know, to follow up with your question, in your body, of course, you have blood. We know about blood, the red stuff that your heart pumps, but you also have lymph. And the lymph system is twice as large as the circulatory system for the blood. And when we sit, the lymph pools and congests. And it's one of the reasons when you sit for hours on end, you feel awful because your lymph doesn't move. So by, you know, continuing to move, it's good. Another thing that when I have people who have back pain, that I get them to do, and it's a really simple fix, is to get a Swiss ball, one of those gigantic plastic balls, and sit on them. But again, you have to find the right size ball for your height. So does the relaxbackuk.com sell Swiss balls?
No, it doesn't sell Swiss balls, but it does sell a chair that moves. Okay, so and actually sometimes people often ask me, they say, oh, you know, why not? Why don't I just get one of these Swiss balls and sit on that instead of a back app chair? The chair's called the back app. And I come up, there's one sort of difference, quite fundamental difference really. On the Swiss ball, you put your feet on the floor. So your feet are on the floor. So I tend to say, right, you'll move if you kind of want to or remember to, if your feet are on the floor. On the back app chair, there's a ring which you put your feet on. So you're always going to move. So you can be concentrating on your spreadsheet or talking to your customer on the phone, you know, doing whatever you're doing. And you're going to move without having to think about it. So I think that the back app chair will keep you moving. Swiss balls, you're going to move, absolutely, but you can kind of forget about movement possibly on one of them. So you will keep moving on these back app chairs.
Yeah, I think that both.
Can I ask you another question?
Of course. Let's have a dialogue.
I know.
Help everybody. Yes.
Yeah. So this is like, I know you're meant to be interviewing me, but this just talking about chairs and something that I never really get. And if there's someone listening that can, you know, tell us or tell me, why are cars so horrible for backs? I bet a load of your customers, your clients, hate driving. What's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the client yesterday, remember I said she came in and literally the first thing that we talked about was how she needed to sit differently. And I was explaining to her how to sit. And I was recommending that she get a very simple wedge. It's called the Relaxo back, which is a wedge that basically helps you to have that anterior pelvic tilt. And she said to me, she said, when I can hardly get out of my car when I finish driving. And from my perspective, if you look at the way that most car seats are designed, they force your pelvis into retroversion of the pelvis, where the hip bones are rolling back and you're going into that turtle shape and and you're compressing those discs. And one of the things that I'm always explaining to people, and it's such a duh when you think about it, you have a spine, there are vertebrae, and then there are nerves that run through the vertebrae. Well, a nerve is the width of a strand of your hair. So if you think about how tiny a strand of hair is, and then how easy it would be to pinch that. So if you sit with this retroversion of the pelvis, the nerves are going to be pinched. And the nerves also what's called innervate your glands and organs. So there's not going to be good nerve flow and the nerves that go in your lower back go to your urinary system, your reproductive system. So your whole body will not work properly when you sit improperly. So I'm not a car designer, so I can't answer that, but I'm always recommending where people have chronic back pain to get a back cushion to put in their car so that they can have this anterior.
And it seems like it seems like the cars that are the most fun, you know, sports cars, they're the worst. You've got these bucket seats, so your knees are higher than your hips. And I think there must be some correlation actually between men having a midlife crisis and back pain, not just because of their age, but it's because they go out and buy one of these bonkers cars. And it's, yeah, why it should be like that, I don't know, because it seems like designers spend a lot of time thinking about how many cup holders they're going to be and all this stuff. They should get some advice from someone like you on how to design it so it's comfy.
And then you can sell it at relaxbackuk.com. But again, you can get,
Absolutely.
if you're in the US, you can get these wedges and they're fatter at the back, yep, and then thinner towards your knees. And they help to facilitate this anterior pelvic tilt. So I happen to be sitting on, and I think it's called an Aeon chair, AEON chair. And I've definitely worked with clients where I went to their home or office and I helped to adjust their chair to be the right height. Are there any particular brands of chairs that you especially recommend for people who are suffering from back pain?
Okay, so on my website, I only distribute one type of chair, the made by the Back App. And so Back App chair actually makes two types of chair, but essentially they are saddle type chairs. And it's very hard to sit with your knees above your hips, so your knees will be below your hips on a saddle type chair. So those are the chairs that I distribute. Now, if they don't suit people, I won't kind of force them to use them. But what I have found is that people try them out. Most people tend to like them. There are, however, some people that just don't get on with a saddle type chair. They find it uncomfortable. Men might say, oh, I can't possibly sit on that. You know, certain parts of my anatomy are far too large. You know, I just can't sit on a saddle chair. What I found is that if men are surrounded by men, they'd be more likely to say that. But in that case, if it doesn't work for them, they'll have to try a more traditional type office chair. And in that case, the advice I'll give would just be more or less what I've said already. If you can get something that allows you to have your knees below your hips and be adjustable and keep moving. I don't really suggest one type or another.
Okay, great advice. Now, I also understand that you sell adjustable desks, and I've seen desks where people can stand at the desk. What is your professional opinion about standing desks?
Okay, so I like standing desks a lot for two reasons. The first reason is if you're sitting at a standing desk, it's very easy to adjust the height. So you can get it to the right height for you, whether you're 6'6" or 5'1". So it's often better for sitting, but standing can be absolutely tremendous. There are some people that will stand all day. I'm not one of them. Okay, so I'm sitting down now. Sometimes I will stand to work. However, I really think that a bad standing posture or being uncomfortable standing is as bad or possibly worse as a poor sitting posture. And what I find, unless I'm really concentrating on how I'm standing as opposed to on my work, which is obviously the wrong thing, after a while I will end up standing as though I'm waiting for a bus, which is kind of standing on one leg. And I always favor one side, actually. If you do that for a long time, it's going to feel really uncomfortable and will probably have long-term repercussions on your back. So I think, yes, I do love standing and it works nicely, but you do have to be kind of careful that you keep your weight evenly distributed on both feet.
Great advice. And I've definitely been in offices where the person has a standing desk and then also a table. So when they have a meeting where everybody can sit down together. So, if you have an office that's large enough for both, then you can switch back and forth, which kind of we talked about proper sitting posture, sitting on your sit bones, anterior pelvis, pelvic tilt, knees below your hips, chest lifted, spine extended, reaching tall through the crown of the head, lifting your xiphoid process. So let's talk about how to stand properly. Now, in my 26 years of teaching yoga, there's some things that you have to hear over and over and over again, and then one day it just clicks. So the position of your feet controls the position of your hips. So if your feet are turned out in a funky way, then that's going to rotate your hips improperly. And a lot of people with chronic low back pain, part of it is they're standing or walking like a duck. So, and what I mean by that, if you look at a duck, their little web feet are turned out. And when you walk like that, it jams up your sacroiliac joint at the lower back. So anyway, your feet control the position of your hips. Now the position of your hips controls your knees. So if you've got knee pain, part of what you have to do is fix your hips. And whether that stretch your hips or correct the position of your hips, your legs extend the spine. So here we are, we're talking about standing desks. So once you understand that your legs extend the spine, when you stretch your hamstrings, you release a lot of back pain. And when you stand properly, that alone can alleviate back pain. Whereas if you're standing, you're less likely to experience pain than if you're sitting. So again, let's talk about how to stand properly. So what I get people to do is to get a dictionary. Okay, so I know most of us now, we look everything up on the internet, we Google everything, but get a big hardback book. And I say that I'm a yoga teacher. I've got yoga blocks, yoga eggs. I've got every yoga device there is. So if you have a yoga block, you would put a yoga block between your feet. If you don't happen to be a yoga practitioner and don't have a yoga block, get a big book, hardback book, and put it between your feet. Now hug the book or the block with your feet.
I thought for a moment I was going back to finishing school and you were going to make me put it on my head. And because my wife has awful stories of when she was at school.
Yeah, my grandmother used to do that. My grandmother used to put a book on my head and make me walk around the dining room. But anyway, you put the book or the block between your feet, and that's going to position your hips properly. And then you pull your inner groins gently back to the center of you without locking your knees out. And just doing that is going to lift and extend the spine. You're going to lift the xiphoid process. Well, what is that? The very tip of your sternum. You're going to lift that up. You're going to roll your shoulders back and then reach tall through the crown of the head. So just doing that.
I'm sitting, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah. So, as we talk about it, you can just feel your spine lifting. And I'll never forget, I was having a one-on-one yoga lesson with a yoga teacher in Asheville. And at the time I had a lot of shoulder pain because of swinging an axe in my garden. And she got me completely out of shoulder pain by changing the way I was standing. And so if you have back pain, I promise you that one of the things that will help you is by re-examining the way you sit, re-examining the way you stand, and always, if there are aids that are going to help you sit properly or work with greater ease, like a standing desk or a better chair, you're going to be far better off. Now,
have you come across? Sorry, I butted in, but have you come across treadmills with desks? I was at an exhibition one time, and they had these desks that go up and down, and I like those, so I was chatting to them. But they also had these treadmills that went with the desks, and I first saw it, and I thought, you gotta be kidding! That's just bonkers. This huge, great, massive treadmill in the office. And then I thought I'd give it a go because it was there. And I started going for this little walk while I was standing at the desk. And I kind of liked it, actually. It was quite intriguing. I don't use one, but I know people that do, that swear by it. And I know people that go for a walk when they're on the phone or just go for a walk when they're thinking. So maybe those two things are related. I don't know. Have you come across them?
I've never seen a treadmill desk. I've heard about them. And I will say that I have had clients lose 30 pounds just by getting one of the standing desks that you're talking about. Because when you're standing and you're moving around, constantly, you're going to burn a lot more calories just in, your day-to-day life and your everyday activities of daily living, your ADLs, than if you're sitting constantly. I know when I go to the gym and I get on the treadmill, I walk, because I don't run. I'm 61, I'm soon to be 62. I do the power walking.
I don't believe you.
Walk 4.3 miles an hour, and then I'll go at an incline and, up to, all the way up to 15%. I don't start at 15%. So I think that when we're working, we want to focus on our work. So, A standing desk is probably a great happy medium, so you get to move around. But I know that a lot of people are concerned about their weight and wanting to, improve their body composition. So that might be something to consider. Now, Mike Dilke, we've been gone through this coronavirus lockdown.
Yeah.
Do many people suffer from aches and pains in general more with lockdown? What do you think?
Yeah, I think they are. They really are. So I've spoken through people that I've interviewed on my show asking about this. I've spoken to people that have done surveys on sort of changes in work habits and where they do their work. And in fact, this was quite recent. And the chap I was speaking to said, you'd be amazed at the number of people that have said to us they work in bed at home. It's just crazy. Why would you do that to yourself? But however, some people have also been getting quite creative and making adjustable height desks out of the ironing board, for instance, all kinds of different things. So people have been creative, but some have been a lot more static. So it might be a function of being more static rather, well, working in bed is different, but if you're working at the kitchen table and it's not quite the right height, it's not going to be great. But if you are more static, so actually you don't walk to work in the first place, you roll out of bed, have breakfast, and then walk another 5 yards and start your working day. This is a big issue, I think, and I'm not sure it's going to go away, because I've spoken to people about changes in our habits in lockdown. It's one of the themes I've had on my show, which I've really enjoyed, actually. Things like eating habits and exercise habits, but work habits. And a lot of people are of the opinion that these work habits that we've picked up during lockdown are going to stay with us to a large extent. Now, not everyone can work at home because, people just have different sorts of jobs. But I think a lot of people are now going to be doing more work at home, and the design of homes isn't going to catch up, in the next few years. So there are going to be a lot more people, a lot more sedentary. And then alongside with that, during lockdown, a lot of gyms were closed, certainly in the UK, and they still are now. I don't know what it's been like near you. So the opportunity to exercise, although obviously not everyone exercises in a gym, but a lot of people did, and that was shut down. There's been a big boost actually in exercise apps, because people are looking for something else to do as far as exercise is concerned. So that this ain't going to go away quickly. People are going to become more sedentary unless they really do something to take some really positive steps to try and stop it. So this idea of getting aches and pains from lockdown, it's very real, and I think it's going to stick with us for a bit.
Yes, and I've heard people joke about the COVID-19, which means gaining 19 pounds because of sitting and working in bed. So you're bringing up a really good point, which is if you are suffering from a lot of aches and pains during lockdown, you want to think about, where have I been working? I know for myself, I'm the author of 10 books, and a lot of my books have been written in bed.
Really?
Oh, exactly. I know, who knew? Or in my hammock. But it's because when I wake up first thing in the morning, I pray and meditate and ask for guidance. And then I get the inspiration and I'll start writing. And then I get up and do my day. And then when I'm editing my books, I'm in my hammock on the porch, which is just heaven. It doesn't get any, work conditions don't get any better than that. That's about as relaxed as you can be.
So we're very lucky in that we both work for ourselves. We're self-employed,
Yeah.
But it does bring on quite a big question. Large companies that employ lots of people who are, to a large extent, now working at home, they have a responsibility like when their staff are coming into the office, they've got to make sure that they're, you know, healthy, happy, and have a reasonable place to work. They have those same responsibilities with people working at home. Now, I think some companies are taking that quite seriously, and some are sort of paying lip service to it. But I think that's going to be another growth area. I'm not quite sure what it will lead to, but it's going to change to companies having to be a lot more responsible when they've got staff working at home, which might lead to, you know, fewer people working in bed or using the ironing board as their desk, which, you know, that's probably got to be a good thing.
Yes. Now, Mike Dilke, you interview people on the Relax Back UK show all the time about back pain. As you listen to the experts, what do you see as the primary causes of back pain? Trick question.
Okay, so yeah, well, we've spoken about that a lot, haven't we? So it's a bit of a summary, really. There's sitting poorly, yeah, which essentially means slumping, having a chair that supports everything if you don't really need it, not supporting your own body. But I think probably much more important than that, and again, this sounds weird from someone that sells chairs, is sitting too much. If you just sit too much and you're too sedentary, it's going to cause not just back pain problems, but all kinds of problems. Then there's the height of the desk. I spoke about that, and it really is just a matter of tradition. It's historical that desks are this particular height, whether you're really tall or really quite short. And I think that's a significant problem. Sit-stand desks are becoming more popular in the UK, and I know certainly in Nordic countries they're more popular, so they are catching on. That's a good thing. I think the other thing that people forget about is actually the height of your screen. So if you are doing a lot of work on a computer, have the screen such that when you look ahead comfortably, you can see it nicely rather than kind of crouching down like this. You know, it's just you're making difficulty for yourself. And then also, and I've seen this is quite hard to believe, but quite often people will have their screen, their monitor to one side of their desk for whatever reason, and the keyboard over here, and they'd be sort of switched round in an impossible angle.
Yeah.
And they'll feel fine for the first couple of days, but you do that for a couple of years, you're in pain.
Yeah, which brings me, I'll have to tell a story for our audience, because I'll never forget years ago, this lady coming to me with chronic neck pain. And she said, I get massage, I go to the chiropractor, I just can't figure out why I can't get rid of my neck pain. And I remember talking to her about her desk at work, because she was always trying to hide from her boss. So her body was twisted to the left and her head was twisted to the right for 6 to 8 hours a day. And then she was trying to hide behind her cubicle so that her boss didn't see her. So absolutely. And it's really funny when you hear about it, but you know, we don't think about your body is actually like clay, and it's going to adapt to whatever positions and postures you put in it. So you can either put yourself into good posture or put yourself into these crazy contorted postures that cause problems.
Yeah. And then another big thing, which we did mention, but I think this causes more grief than people realize, it's driving. So it's the design of cars, but actually, and I'm totally guilty of this as well, it's not just the design of my car. So I'm 6 foot tall, I'm reasonably tall, but I'm a bit of an odd shape. I've got quite short legs, to the point where actually my wife calls me low bottom. That's her nickname for me. The result is when I sit in my car, my head often is kind of, if I sit upright, it'll hit the roof of the car. So I've got to slump down a little bit. And that's, you know, that's just bad. So that's bad enough. But when I'm driving, I don't like driving. And I get really upset if there's too much traffic, and there's queues and there's delays and other crazy drivers, and I feel myself grip the wheel and I hunt over. I just get more and more aggravated, and that's not good for, well, it's not good for anything actually, but it's certainly not good for back pain.
Yeah.
So I think driving as well is a big cause.
Yeah, and I want to interject there, Mike Dill, because I completely agree with you. I live in Atlanta, and the interstates, I think, have, 7 to 9 lanes. And I remember when I first moved to Atlanta, I was incredibly tense when driving, and it's the chronic muscle tension, right? So when you become stressed, your muscles literally contract. You hold your breath. When you slump and you round like a turtle, you can't extend your lungs. You're not getting good breathing, good breaths, which is going to make you more anxious. So that rounded posture collapses your lungs. You can't breathe properly. The more shallow your breath, the more anxious you feel, the more your muscles tighten up, and the more you suffer pain. So it all kind of goes together. And I remember when I first moved to Atlanta, I would get so nervous about driving at rush hour, and I would have to put on relaxing music, just calming music to just.
Yeah.
Now I work out of my house because I hate driving, and I've been working out of my house pre-COVID anyway, because I just really dislike the traffic and the driving.
Yeah. So I mean, that's one bonus of lockdown, that there has been less driving. For me, certainly, there's been less driving. So that's a big positive. Yeah.
So any other primary causes of back pain that you want to share with our audience?
I think those have got to be the main ones. I mean, that there will always be others. People associated with certain jobs get a lot of back pain, but those people will always be in a minority. So the one that I think of, dentists always get back pain. But then the flip side of the coin, they don't really get any sympathy either, do they? Because no one really likes going to see the dentist. So it's a bit of a tough break for them. So that there will be plenty of people that have other causes of back pain that are more specific. People that have labouring jobs, bricklayers, this kind of thing. Actually, I did on the Relax Back UK show. I did a couple of shows on how technology can help on building sites and try and make manual labour slightly less intensive, which was pretty interesting. But no, I really think in the modern world, kind of those things that I've touched on are the main culprits.
And which brings me, this weekend I was helping one of my best friends clean up her mother's house after her mother passed away, and the gentleman who was the farmhand came to help us. And probably 5 or 6 years ago, I'd helped the farmhand because he had herniated his discs. And so he was experiencing excruciating pain. If you've never had a herniated disc, I mean, there's nothing that'll make you cry like a herniated disc. It is incredibly painful. And any rate, so I helped him at that time, and I'd given him some yoga exercises to heal the back. And he'd done those exercises, but like everybody, once he got out of pain, he stopped doing his exercises. Well, when he came to see us, human beings being who we are, he was hunched over like an old man and walking with a cane. And I want to make the point that if you have a manual job, if you do not take care of your back, you may lose the ability to work. So he was having financial problems because he couldn't work. And one of the quickest ways to herniate a disc is to bend over and twist. So if you're bending over and picking up a heavy object and twisting it, that weighted twist is going to put you at risk for herniating your disc. So if you've got a manual job, please take care of your back. Please think about how you're sitting and standing, and maybe get advice from a yoga teacher so that you can continue to work. Because if you injure yourself to where you can't work, you're going to end up in poverty, which is sad to say. And for our audience, I want to say that I have created a free video series on YouTube on yoga for scoliosis. So if you go to YouTube and put in Catherine Carrigan, and then look for my playlist on yoga for scoliosis, and these are incredibly safe exercises. It's a sequence. So you need to do the sequence in order, and that will alleviate tremendous back pain, and it's free on YouTube. So I'll include that in the show notes, but definitely look that up. And one of my 10 books is called The Difference Between Pain and Suffering. And in that book, I have an appendix with the 41 yoga exercises that I use most often to get people out of pain. And I've got full page photos, full page directions. So that's also a great resource. And you can get it as an ebook or paperback. The audiobook doesn't have the photos. So Mike Dilke, owner of relaxbackuk.com and host of the fabulous The Relax Back UK show. Any final thoughts for our audience?
Yeah, I do actually. Just while you were talking, that made me think of one thing. You were talking about causes, and I think this might be more specific to men, because we're a bit stubborn. If you are suffering, if you've got a back twinge here and there, a lot of men, women will do this as well, but I think men will ignore it. Don't ignore it. Think about it. Get some help, whether it's from a yoga teacher or a physiotherapist. Find a therapist that you are happy with and trust. Go see them. It doesn't stop there then. If they suggest some exercises, do the exercises. So many people go and see a physiotherapist or a yoga teacher or someone and pay them money, good money, because they want their help, and then get some exercises suggested to them, and then they don't do them. Don't do that. Just don't do that.
Yeah, keep doing what helps, right?
Yeah.
And it was so funny when I saw the Farmhand, he said, I still have the directions that you gave me years ago. He said, I found it the other day when I was really hurting. I think I need to start doing that again. Yeah. And I said,
right.
Just be gentle. So be compassionate with yourself and realize that there's multiple factors here. You've been listening to the very knowledgeable Mike Dilke, owner of relaxbackuk.com and host of the Relax Back UK show. You can find out more about him and his wonderful work at relaxbackuk.com. I'm your host of the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. Please visit my websites, catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com, where you're going to find the free handout on posture. And remember, when you take care of your back, you get out of pain and you have more energy and you feel better naturally. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.